What's up, everybody? So I'm reading in a familiar passage in the Gospel of John, chapter 6, where Jesus fed 5,000. And we know that Jesus took very little and he made a lot. And maybe this ministers to you tonight that you're end up in a situation where you have very little and you have no idea how ends is going to meet, and you're stricken by fear. And obviously the fear is tempting you to do what you know how to do to make ends meet, instead of being patient and keeping your eyes on God and keeping your faith in Him and trusting that if He brought you to this point, He's not brought you this far to leave you hanging. That when you stand upon the Word of God and you cling to His promises, that at just the right time He comes through and He rocks your world. My God, maybe that's how this ministers to you, but this is not what the Lord has showed me tonight. As I continue to read, I see God command the 5,000 to sit down, but this is where the Lord really pricked my heart. He made the 5,000 sit down, but instead of Him distributing the food to them, He gave the food to the disciples, and then He commanded them to distribute the food amongst the 5,000. Now let me ask you a question. What if the disciples would have gotten the food and then ran off, sat on a tree, and they just began to eat it all by themselves? What would have happened? That's right, the 5,000 would have missed a blessing. The 5,000 would have been left hungry. And let me ask you a question today. Obviously, we know that is not how the story goes. Obviously, they distributed the 5,000 were blessed. They were satisfied. They were fed. But this is what the Lord said to me. How many of us are getting fat off what God has given us because we're keeping it to ourselves and not in return feeding others? My God, how many of us have overcome drug addiction? How many of us have had an abortion at one time? Listen, maybe you ladies are watching and you've been through a painful time in your life where you went through with an abortion and you were stricken with guilt and shame and fear and broken. But yet the grace of God stood up in your life. He reconstructed you, set you on a solid rock, brought joy in your life, and has just begun to bless you. Or maybe you've been through a divorce and came out on the other side. Or maybe your marriage was hanging on by a thread, but you put your faith in God and He reconstructed it. And today your marriage is better than it's ever been. This is what the Lord showed me. These people are getting fat off the blessings that God has given, while other people who are directly in the same situation God has brought you out are starving, because the reason He brought you out of it was so that you would go and get the people that are directly in it, so that you could feed them like somebody did you, so that they can come out victorious on the other side. My God, what if we stopped keeping to ourselves what God has given, and we truly understand what it means? If we give, we receive. What we freely receive, He intended for us to freely give. What if that mess that God has brought you out of was intended to be a message to go and give to the one who has no hope, just like you didn't 2 days ago, 6 months ago, a year ago? What if your ministry is through ministering to the people that are hurting and going through what you've overcome? My God, I pray this has blessed you in a mighty way. And if it has, I pray that you would share it with somebody else, and have a wonderful evening.